I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And today we're going to be looking at what's your story?
You know, what's the story here?
Yeah.
What's your story?
You know, one of the things that is so incredibly important to do after a breakup is look at your own story. Looking at the relationship. Now in the beginning, you're probably going to really beat yourself up and focus on everything that you did wrong. Mm-hmm. But if you take a step back and you have some time to really reflect and look at things, you'll see that there were probably many points in the relationship that you were unhappy and you wanted out of the relationship or thought it wasn't going to work out. And there were a lot of things that your partner did that you weren't happy about, or maybe issues going on that weren't getting resolved. And you want to look at that story. Okay? So Margaret has some good info here on that, and we're going to talk about it.
Okay, and what's the story? And it's not complicated. It's nothing more than telling your story. And I just want to tell you that storytelling has always been a huge part of human history. And before we had writing, we told stories in rhyme so that people could remember them. Because it's easier to remember a rhyme than it is, just a straight old story. So don't forget Aesop's fables. He's the guy who came up with the hare and the tortoise. And those were stories, and they had a little moral to them. I think the hare and the tortoise means don't hurry. I've always liked that one. I'm not one to hurry about much. But writing the story of something makes it much, much more manageable. So what we're going to say is, after a breakup, particularly after a difficult breakup that you didn't choose, it's great to write yourself a story of what happened.
Yeah.
And I've seen in the literature that it's important to tell yourself a story of how it happened. But I'll go another step and say, jot it down. Once you've got it into words and on paper, it's never as overwhelming as it is still in your head, where it can kind of play in an endless loop.
This is so true.
Yeah.
That's exactly one of the main reasons that I did workbooks. Because there is so much of that is looking at your story, reflecting on your beliefs, your behaviors, what you did in the relationship, what your partner did, exploring different things.
Right.
And you would be surprised how many people tell me they print it up and they like to handwrite it out. I get lovely emails all the time. They like to put the pen to the paper, and they, they'll just print it up on at their house, or they'll go to like an office store, and they like to write it out. And I get such incredible feedback on the workbooks that it's just
writing it out is a huge help.
Yeah.
Putting words to it is number one, and putting it down on paper is number two. You can do it any way you want. You can start with once upon a time, or you'll look at this, whatever works for you. And eventually, we want you to get to they all lived happily ever after.
That's right.
Right, that's the goal. But you can write it once, and people have told me that they write it once and it's pretty short. They think about it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. They write it again, and it's much longer because you remember more of it. And you're able to put it down and look at some of the interchanges between yourself and your partner.
Yeah. Okay. And once you're incorporating a lot of the stuff that Margaret and I have taught you guys, you start to add to the story. Oh, you know what? There was this part about the parents that I forgot about.
I forgot to say, yeah. And those things are always important. And it's sort of like you keep at it until the story makes sense to you. And there are certainly many who have said this before us. One being Judith Herman, who wrote a staggeringly brilliant book in the 1990s about trauma, and said that the first thing you need to do is establish a trauma narrative so that we know what we're working on. And sometimes that's even too painful to write more than 2 sentences about in the beginning.
Yeah.
But you keep at it, okay? You keep at it and make it make sense. If it doesn't make sense, we'll make it make sense eventually.
And breakups are extremely traumatic.
Yes, they are.
Extremely.
Yes, they are.
Because attachment trauma is extremely traumatic.
There's nothing more traumatic than attachment trauma. No, nothing. And nothing more powerful than the fear of losing loved ones, right?
Yeah. Because at our very core, it feels like we're going to die without them.
That's exactly right. And people say that. In fact, we just did one where the woman said, I thought I was going to die. Yeah. Well, probably not, but that is what it feels like.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
Awful.
So as I did some research on this, I found that there is a whole kind of therapy called narrative therapy, being practiced largely in Australia, where it was dreamed up by 2 psychologists, and good for them. And one of the things they liked about it was it didn't label anybody as crazy, and it didn't make anything one person's fault. It sort of was much more neutral than some of the forms of therapy that we've had. So, and then we say to you, work on yourself. And many of you come back and say to us, well, what does that mean? What should I do? Write your own life story with whatever you remember. And if you don't remember a lot, start with the little bit you do remember.
Yeah.
I'll have people tell me sometimes, I don't remember much before I was like 10. Write down what you do remember. Do you remember kindergarten? Do you remember your birthdays? Do you remember Christmases? There are all sorts of ways to go about that. And again, if you start that project, if it's really slow and you don't remember a lot, take your time. Don't ever overwhelm yourself. But as you remember some things, others will come back.
And the workbooks really does work on a lot of the different narratives. And like explores a lot of different aspects of your relationship that you wouldn't normally think about. But then when you watch the video and you think about it, you're like, you know what? This was a theme in my relationship and it wasn't addressed, or this came up. And so that is going to be incorporated into your story.
Right. And one of the things that writing your story will help you do is look at your family of origin, which is extremely important because remember, that's where our attachment styles are initially formed.
Yeah.
And again, it can be extremely difficult, but just stay at it and do a very little bit at a time. I remember being told one time by a very experienced therapist when I was not a very experienced therapist, that if you want a quick way to know when you're done with therapy, that if you can tell your whole life story with all of the high points without fainting, crying, or running out of the room. Okay? If you can tell your whole story, you're probably done with therapy. Okay? And you're pretty healthy.
Wow.
It's simple to do, but it's not as easy as it sounds.
No.
And the more difficult it is, I think the more it tells you what a difficult time you've had. And I've had people say to me, well, I had a perfectly fine childhood, but I don't remember all of it. No, you didn't block it out for no reason. So I don't think it was quite as good as you think.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood. I have so much anxiety from what was going on.
Of course.
With my stepdad and my mom and all kinds of stuff that I've talked about. You guys have heard many of it. Many of those stories.
And your psyche does the best you can to keep you functioning. So if it has to block some of it, it has to block some of it. And that's okay to get you through it. But eventually, when you're looking at planning your life and choosing a partner, it's important to know. You know? And I had somebody this week who was working very hard, and I congratulate him again, actually. But he said he knew there was more to the story, and he didn't think he wanted to know it. And I said, I hate to tell you, but yes, you do need to know it. Because he had been abused oddly by extended family. And I said, you don't know all that they may have done to you, and you have to know it, unfortunately. You know, find all the support you need in dealing with it, but you need to know. And I think he did understand what I said to him. Because people get in trouble not for what they know, but what they don't remember. It's what you don't remember that can get you in the most trouble.
Yeah.
Obscure though that may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can act out of conflicts that are unconscious to us. But as soon as they're conscious, then we can deal with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I hope that you really start to think about things, because this breakup is an opportunity to really re-examine your life, your relationships with your caregivers, your childhood, your romantic relationships.
That's right.
And through that, you can grow and change and become at peace with some of the
Right.
issues that have happened to you.
Right. And mental health uses all these big words that we call jargon. And just telling a story sounds much more simple and reasonable to me.
Yeah.
I can relate to that quick.
Yeah.
All right.
If you had to write a story, I don't know if there's enough paper.
Oh, it's very long because I've been alive now for about 950 years. You know, went through the Renaissance, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was at the opening performance of Romeo and Juliet, etc., etc. So I don't know.
We could start you at one end of the Great Wall of China and get you to the...
Well, from what I remember, the printing press was invented in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think if we had you writing on the wall, you could go to all the way to the other end of the wall.
There you go.
And then go back.
And it would be written in stone.
Yeah.
And everyone would have it. That would be great.
All right, so hopefully you found this video helpful and something to think about. Of course, when you want to get our help personally, just go to my website, askcraig.net. Sign up for the coaching option that works best for you. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Margaret is also available for Skype coaching.
When I'm not writing on the Great Wall of China. So feel free to sign up with me. I'll be delighted to talk with you.
Just click on Margaret on the top of the website. Remember to subscribe to the channel. And that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And we will talk with you soon.